Whether you're fighting, healing, caregiving, treating cancer, or simply searching for hope, this space is for you. Welcome to FU Cancer, where meaningful conversations meet powerful community. My name is Juliette Jorgenson. I'm your host, a registered dietitian and cancer advocate, and together we're turning challenges into connection. Check out our platform on the web at fucancer.health. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Juliette Jorgenson, a registered dietitian and passionate advocate for cancer supportive care, who is extending the mission and vision of our FU Cancer podcast. Juliette brings experience supporting patients and caregivers across nutrition, symptom management, and wellness, and now she's creating a space to share practical guidance, expert insights, and inspiration to the cancer community. Juliette, we are so excited to have you here today. Let's go ahead and kick off and start off with if you can share a little bit about your own journey, how you became a registered dietitian, and what inspired you to focus on oncology or cancer care and survivorship.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Shelby. It's an honor to be here, and I'm just overjoyed to be joining the FU Cancer family. So, yes, I'll give you the SparkNotes version on how I ended up here. So, in college, when I was a freshman, I became a personal trainer and Pilates instructor. I was very into the whole fitness space. I still am. I still love it. But with that, I fell into a bit of an unhealthy relationship with calorie counting macros, all of that. And I had a very rigid relationship with food and nutrition. So it was mentally debilitating. And I began taking nutrition classes just out of my own curiosity in school. And a big shout out to those professors, because in those classes is where a beautiful thing happened. I began to find healing, and I began to understand metabolism, the vital functions of micronutrients, macronutrients, what they play in our body and in our organs, our brain. And so with that, I wanted to help others to find joy and healing through nutrition and movement as well. So that's kind of how it started. And then it snowballed from there. In grad schools where I found my why. I began learning about medical nutrition therapy and the medicinal values of food and the implications for nutrition to coincide with conventional medicine. And so it's my aspiration to help patients use nutrition as a tool to manage their conditions. And I really found my passion in cancer care during my clinical rotations. I found the most meaning when working with patients fighting cancer, when troubleshooting ideas for treatment management and appetite loss. And I think it all clicked when I had a patient thank me for giving them autonomy in what felt like the only area of their life that they could control, which was nutrition. And so I knew from that point onward, I wanted to specialize in helping those battling cancer to reclaim their autonomy through nourishment.
I love that. And thank you for sharing some of kind of the personal story behind you becoming a registered
Yeah.
dietitian and really what that looked like and the healing aspect around kind of with food and medicine and all of that good stuff. And so what exactly inspired you to take over the FU Cancer podcast? And we're super excited for you to be our new host and to continue our mission and vision. Really, what do you hope to achieve for patients and caregivers as part of being the FU Cancer podcast host?
Well, thank you. I mean, as you know, Shelby, it's very near and dear to my heart to be here with FU Cancer. I had the joy of working with FU Cancer during one of my clinical rotations during my journey to become a dietitian over the past summer. And my learning was so enriching and fulfilling. And I was able to use my creativity to cultivate community on the FU Cancer platform. And also in listening to the podcast, I was able to bring my understanding of whole person centered care in the cancer continuum to a completely new level. So my hope is that this space will continue to grow as a beautiful community and to foster meaningful conversations that really matter and to hold space for so many people. So yeah, I'm so excited, and it's just such an honor to be here. And I think patients will be able to achieve, and caregivers also, that I'm not so alone in this understanding. I think it can feel so isolating to walk through a season that maybe no one around you is walking through, but I think it's encouraging to know that there's millions of people walking through this really similar story as you, that you can find it through this platform and this podcast.
Awesome. I love that. So thinking about the podcast and what you're looking to achieve in, this year and ongoing years, how do you think, the podcast and the work that you're going to be doing will help extend the mission and vision of FU Cancer around providing accessible and expert supportive care to patients and caregivers?
Yeah, totally. Well, for those who don't know, FU Cancer focuses on nutrition, physical activity, mental health with practical evidence-based resources, and it empowers both patients and caregivers to build resilience, improve their quality of life through every stage of the journey after a cancer diagnosis. And through the podcast, I think we can dive even deeper into these topics and really go into niche, important discussion areas that may be overlooked in a conventional clinical field. So, for example, next week we have a sex therapist coming on. She's a doctor and she's incredible. She specializes in cancer care. So, she'll be coming on the podcast to answer questions in that realm. And I think that'll address a lot of questions that don't get answered, in your typical everyday conversation in a doctor's office.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you gave a sneak peek for upcoming episode around sexual health with one of our clinical psychologists who specialize in sexual health. I'd love to hear, do you have any other topics in docket or where are you at with kind of planning for the next couple of months with podcast release?
Yes, plenty of fun upcoming topics. I'll give a little sneak peek. So, in addition to that episode, we also are looking forward to having an expert in prostate care, cancer care, as well as menopause. There will be nutrition travel tips for managing cancer on the go, navigating life outside the hospital walls after a diagnosis, cancer rehab, functional status. We'll also be bringing on survivor stories, and we have a clinician as well who's a survivor. So, super excited to bring her on as well. And we'll be bringing on patients and hearing their personal stories too, which I think will be really empowering and wonderful. So, yeah.
Cool. So it sounds like a lot of the episodes are not just going to focus on nutrition, but other areas like symptom management, different wellness topics, and survivorship. Does that sound kind of in alignment with what your programming is going to do?
Absolutely, yes. So it'll cover all things all throughout the cancer continuum of care and topics that we just listed, as well as other really unique conversations, personal stories, important information that, we should shed light on, easily accessible to all through the podcast. So we'll have expert voices that'll unpack misinformation, really hone in on the true science and make it digestible for every audience member.
Yeah, I'm curious just to understand a little bit more about your communication style on the podcast and how you plan to kind of move forward from your communication lens being more informative. Is it more conversational, a little bit of both? Like, how do you see that as a new podcast host?
Yeah, I think definitely conversational. I really want to foster an authentic and organic conversation with every guest we bring on. That is really the root of it. And then I think the informative layer will come primarily from our guests. I want to leave that to them because they're the expert in their field.
Very cool. And you mentioned a little bit earlier around just keeping things like really digestible because we know that medical jargon and a lot of health information can just feel like a literal foreign language to many
Yeah.
people outside of the healthcare space. So, how are you trying to make sure, and even in your own practice and life, these really kind of complex health, diagnoses, clinical terminology, medical information is really actionable and relatable for people, both patients and caregivers who are listening to the podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think very valid concern because medical jargon gets like alphabet soup and it's really complex. And I remember
Yeah.
being a dietetic student and just being so lost sometimes with all the words and phrases. So definitely, I think our guests have done a great job and they do a great job of breaking down any complex medical jargon. But definitely, if there's anything I pick up on during an episode, I would circle back and ask the guest to just break down whatever term it is. Also, I do want to highlight that during our podcast lives, which is a function we have available on the FU Cancer platform, there's a time that we have designated to take any and all live questions from anyone listening on the podcast live. So it isn't recorded in the actual podcast, but it's a time when you can, if there's something you didn't quite understand or you have a question or you want to dive deeper in something, you can ask the guest yourself.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of my favorite member benefits that we offer is just the Q&A time after the live podcasts for
Mhm.
people to actually ask questions that may be like meaningful or personal to them, that they're able to actually have some time with the guest speaker. And we've had some really cool guests come on the podcast. So super excited for you to get to experience that too.
Me
And
too.
I'm curious, what do you kind of hope listeners down the future, in 2026 and beyond, what do you hope that they're able to kind of feel or learn or really do differently or get from the podcast after listening to some of the episodes?
Yeah. Well, I think primarily I hope all listeners feel empowered. That is the goal. And that they learn something new about maybe themselves or how to cultivate their own autonomy, whether it be in fighting cancer or providing compassionate care or supporting a loved one. And I hope any listener who doesn't have a strong supportive care themselves or a survivorship program in place that they can check out our platform at fucancer.health to explore the really incredible resources that we offer.
Yeah, and I know a lot of
Yeah.
people ask me as the founder, you guys are doing so much, you have so many different kind of resources and tools, which, from the member and the platform facing side, we've got a lot of different options. So how do you see the podcast and kind of the work that you're going to be doing complement really what the FU Cancer brand is at large and really what our platform stands for?
Yeah, I think the podcast really goes hand in hand. Like I mentioned, it provides that deeper layer of information with personal stories and super niche topics. I think you can think of the platform as a space for finding more personalized information related to your health journey, and then the podcast as a space to learn in real time from experts and advocates.
Yeah, I think that's a helpful breakdown just to kind of
Mhm.
understand like what am I getting from this or what's my intention and what's my takeaway. So people, are signing up for things or attending things that they can walk away feeling like they understood what that meant and what they were going to get out of it, right? And not leave confused or there's any misinformation that happens. So I appreciate you kind of like breaking that down.
Yeah.
Um, with some of the podcast guests and some of the episodes that you're curating, are there any types of like themes or hot topic areas that you're excited about personally that you may start thinking about exploring for future episodes down the road?
Yeah, well, something just popped in my mind. I think AI is a very interesting topic, and so implications for clinicians with AI and in the lens of cancer care. So that could
Sure.
be something exciting. I think also it would be enlightening to highlight more episodes, like a recent one that we recorded, which I'm not sure if it's out yet, but it was on managing cancer care with diabetes. So more episodes focusing on supporting cancer care in conjunction with another chronic disease or condition. So I think that's the reality for so many. And then additionally, I think having expert specialists come on to shed light on specific types of cancer. So experts in head and neck cancer or anything GI related, I think that would be really welcomed and needed because not all cancer is the same and symptom management varies with different types of cancer too.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned too, like cancer doesn't discriminate, right? And it shows up, and there may be all other comorbidities or different conditions that also somebody's dealing with. So when we talk about cancer, we also have to be sensitive that there may be things like kidney disease or diabetes or heart failure, some of these other conditions that kind of co-present. So I love the lens of like thinking from a holistic perspective, how we can make sure that listeners have a good experience and some of these other comorbidities are also discussed. So, when you're thinking about the podcast evolving as it grows and we continue to connect with more users, whether this be clinicians or patients or caregivers or different advocates, how do you envision it to really grow in this kind of like widespread lens?
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I'm so excited. I think there's a lot of growth on the horizon, and I definitely envision the podcast becoming a place for further complex conversations. And who knows, maybe someday having a studio, bringing people in physically to have actual conversations in person. I think, and of course, recorded. I know that might be a ways away, but I do think the space has brilliant potential and should just continue fostering community and life-changing conversations. And we have a lot of voices coming on that harness every piece of our mission. So I'm just excited to be a part of it and to keep growing with the podcast and with FU Cancer and everyone who comes on.
Amazing. I love that. And it was really fun just to kind of hear your story and a little bit more about you, introduce you to the users as you take over the podcast and really work to grow and expand its efforts. So thank you so much for sharing your vision insights today. I loved hearing about, the passion and expertise that you have in this area as we continue to offer this as a resource for our community. Again, it's open access. There's no cost. We really want clinicians, patients, advocates, caregivers, everybody to use this information and allow the community to learn topics that may not be traditional topics they would get in their kind of cancer care clinics, if you will. So for our listeners, if today's conversation resonated with you, or if you're looking for more expert cancer support, please check us out, find additional information, education, and resources you can trust that are rooted in evidence at our platform, fucancer.health on the web. And Juliette, thank you again so much for joining us and joining our family here. And thank you to our listeners for spending some time with us. Until next time, I'm Shelby Asesko, the founder of FU Cancer, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. The conversation doesn't end here. Join our community today at fucancer.health for trusted education, real community, and resources. We are here for you every step of the way.